Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species, and Happy Valentine's Day. Therefore, it's February 14th. And I'm with MEIRAV ZUR, and we've been talking for a long time now. Before we went on air, we talked for a whole bunch before this. And I'm going to read the title because part of it I haven't committed, and why this is so important for a whole bunch of people, including myself. But she's an actress and a producer and a writer and a director and a theater founder. And important, really important, she's the creator and performer of, quote, Inconceivable, the totally true one-woman semi-fertile Quasi musical, unquote. That is key and elemental. She has done a play, a one-person play about a subject that's very taboo, infertility. And when I kind of saw all this and we discovered each other on social media, I felt immediate bonding and identification and commonality with MEIRAV, only because, and I'll say it on air, I don't think I've ever said it on air or acknowledged it. You know, it's been buried away. But, you know, my wife and I went through that journey of infertility. So coming up and finding Inconceivable and looking at a million trailers and laughing, I mean, really laughing. And it's not something you really want to laugh about. On the other hand, Reader's Digest for a million years made a lot of money on a segment of Reader's Digest. Laughter is the best medicine, and we discussed this, Mira. We discussed this. You know, this just laughing about it can probably help. So this is my monologue. So this is really a very special, deep, funny, timely, relevant, environmental, all kinds of things thrown together with MEIRAV. So I've done my, I always say it, my Johnny Carson monologue. And I'm so thrilled to introduce MEIRAV ZUR. And if you could do a little, you know, background and stuff, and then we'll jump in.
Sure. Thank you, first of all, so much for having me. And I'm so happy that we got to connect and talk and get to know each other. And we found out so many things that we have in common, including this craziness of infertility. So yeah, my name is MEIRAV. I know it's hard to pronounce, but I'm professionally an actor, and I'm a producer, writer, director. That's on my professional side. And personally, during this whole, you know, time that I was writing and performing and directing and doing all sorts of stuff related with theater work, personally, I was going through infertility. At the time, I didn't think anyone else was, and I wasn't talking about it. So of course I was the only one in the world who was experiencing this, and I didn't want to talk about it. I told my husband not to talk about it so we wouldn't have to deal with questions, shame, guilt, all the stuff that I felt like we didn't need to deal with on top of everything. So we didn't talk about it for years and years. And then at some point, a few years ago, my husband once again suggested I should talk about it with someone, even a professional or a friend or whatever. And I said, no. But then I said, okay, maybe this time I should. But I didn't really know how, because, okay, how am I going to talk about this thing that no one talks about? I'm the only one in the world experiencing this. How do I explain to people that I am this freak of nature without, you know, whatever? So I decided that the only way I could talk about it was by bringing the comedy to it. That's my go-to with everything I do performance-wise. I love comedy. I love the artistry of it. The fact that people don't even notice there's artistry to it. I said, okay, I could do that. So I invited over some friends. They didn't know what they were coming to. I just said, come over on this and this date. We're just going to talk about, hormones, and I'll have some cookies or something like that. And they said, okay. They knew what I do for a living. They've come and supported me on shows and everything. They said, okay, whatever. What is her new quirk? Whatever, we'll come. And they came. I had a few friends over, and I sat in front of them. I prepared everything that I was going to say. And I
Can you put your volume up? We've just lost a little volume. Okay.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Better?
Better.
Yeah. So they came over and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you something, but I didn't tell it to them like a story. I literally said it through funny characters and silly songs, and I had props, and like I did this sort of a show, but not really. I actually wasn't really moving much because I was so nervous. And that's it. And then I was done, and I literally went to the door, opened the door, and wanted them to shuffle out. Like I said, okay, now you know, and you can leave. And then now you know why I've been maybe distant or, weird or, emotional or whatever. Now you can go. We'll never have to talk about it again. But they wouldn't go. They just stayed there, and they started talking about kind of their own related stories that started to come up. And that got me really interested, not so much because they weren't leaving my house, but I said, okay, and here's something that I thought I was the only one going through, but other people have gone through it. And it's not just a little thing that I maybe sort of knew. There's much more to it. There's so much more that people aren't revealing and talking about. And why? In that one room, we all had some sort of connection to something. And that got me really intrigued. And I said, okay, maybe there's something here. And my friends, who were super supportive, and of course they were laughing and everything the whole time, they said, you have to make this a real show, like an actual show. And, you do this, so make this into a show. And I said, well, who's going to, maybe you came to watch because you're my friend, but who's going to come that doesn't know me? But I said, okay, maybe I'll work on it. And I actually did. I worked on it. It took me about a year to develop it into an actual show. I worked, with everything related to, from styling to a dramaturg, and we get it on stage. I really had the pleasure of working with awesome people on this to get this on stage, and I did. And I really thought it was going to be a one-night show, but I was prepared. I'll do a one night only, just get this out there. I'll prove to my friends that no one besides my friends wants to hear me talk about my vagina, but whatever. So I did it. And at that premiere, I had some people that knew me, but the majority, I had no idea who they were. They were complete strangers. And it was very successful. There were people that first of all, everyone laughed. The jokes, I was so worried that no one would, how dare I laugh at something like this? But all the jokes were, just people were laughing and they were crying and they, everything. And people were coming up to me afterwards, people that don't know me, and they were saying, thank you so much for finally talking about this. Thank you for making this, understandable, or thank you, our daughter is going through this and we had no clue really what she's going through, or, my sister is going through this, but I didn't really know what's happening. And so it kind of became this sort of mission that I started to go on, because I said, whoa, if I can do that on one night, maybe I can keep doing it. And that's what I did. I just kept performing it, because in each performance I had those reactions. Everyone was like, from being completely shocked at knowing these things that, this, like, these secret lives of people that they don't know. And statistically, it's secret lives of people they know. It's people in there, and it's everyone in everyone's lives. Someone they know, if they haven't gone through it, it's someone they know that is or has gone through it to some degree. And it's just, it's been crazy. It's been the whole thing has been inconceivable, because it went from, this one night where I didn't really think it was going to be anything, to this show. I took it, I had it all over, from private events to house shows to national theaters. I took it to off-Broadway. It's been insane. And unfortunately, it really came to a halt when that pandemic started, but I did convert to virtual shows and slowly now going back to, outdoor shows, and hopefully slowly going back, because it's just, it really has been affecting people so much so that now I want more people to see it, because it's like, listen, this is what people are going through. And, from having people, it's everywhere from people understanding what their fellow, family member or neighbor is going through, to having actual policy changes from, people saying, oh, perhaps, me as a boss at work, I have people that I work for me that go through this. Perhaps I should be a bit more empathetic and understanding. Perhaps, when people, even policies as far as, funding for certain things. The healthcare issue is, this whole thing with infertility from many countries is not just the emotional and physical. On top of that, it's also this financial burden. So that's also something that, could be taken into consideration, just, from people thinking. This show, just like, I like that it just makes people think. So that's my spiel on that.
Okay. By the way, I'm listening to you. It's been so long that my wife and I were in the middle of all that. And I mentioned this beforehand, it took us like decades to recover financially.
Yeah.
Is this because it's, quote, still experimental, IVF? Is it still is it covered?
So I don't know the reason. I know that in the States, a lot of the reasoning is due to, these medicine politics, and like what is being pushed more to get coverage, and what is going to have someone earn more from it. I don't know. I was going through all this infertility stuff while I was living in Israel, and there actually IVF is covered with healthcare. It not every IVF. I mean, at some point, you have to kind of do some sort of,
chip in.
Yeah, it's not fully covered for 20 IVFs, but yes, many cycles, especially for first child, are covered. And that is huge. When I was going through that, it wasn't even anything I had to consider, luckily. And I feel so fortunate that I didn't have to deal with that as well, because I know of people who have gone through it and are going through it. And that financial issue is just, it's mind blowing to have people just, have their entire future is now changed because of, what they were just trying to do that should have happened naturally. Because isn't that what we learned in school? That it's just gonna happen, so avoid it. And now, people are just trying everything to make it happen, and it's crazy.
We're going to come back to Inconceivable because there's a million more things to talk about. But let's go back in time a little bit. You have a bunch of different titles. Just if you could. So let's start with actress. If you can
Sure.
do a little history, and then we'll go to producer and writer. So let's kind of dissect some titles. So you're an actor.
I started out as an actor. Just that was my thing. I wanted to act. Very much drawn to comedy, of course, and very much drawn to improvisation, which is an art within itself within acting. I really love the theater. I love the live in-person aspect. And I started out as an actor. But as an actor, when you start out professionally, at least when and where I started, the typical route is, okay, go to an agent. The agent will get you the majority of the opportunities through auditioning. And then, if you get the audition, you go to the audition. And if you pass that audition, you get the role. And then it starts again. And then, and I accepted that that's part and parcel. That's part of the deal. But at some point, really quickly, I said, why should I wait for the opportunity? Why can't I just, create my own opportunity and just create work for me? I love to write and create and everything. And so that's where it started. At the time I was living in Israel, and in Israel, English is a second language. It's taught as a second language from as early as third grade. I said, well, they have plays that come into schools. Why don't they have plays in English? And that's how I started. I started with a children's play, and then I started from there, more children's plays. I expanded to, you know, shows for adults and plays for adults. And that's how I started the theater. And I loved it. And I was, you know, that was my main thing. So through necessity, I also became director and writer and producer and driver and loader and unloader and stage manager and marketer and costume designer, everything. So I, you know, through necessity, but I did everything I could, and I learned, you know, along the way. And I'm very fortunate that I had also other professionals who knew what they were doing to help me where I didn't, you know, or I couldn't. And that's it. That's how that happened. Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's funny. I watching you, I gotta, you know, I have to spit these things out. Watching the videos, your trailers and all that, and I'm paying you a supremely high compliment, but there were times when I thought of Gilda Radner.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That is
yeah
beyond
when you were cooking on stage there and you were going, you know, into your different characters, I said it's like Gilda, you know.
Thank you so much.
That's what came to my mind. And you know, she kind of started out that way too, like you did, you know, in Salt City, Chicago, and the stuff they were doing everything. So anyway, I thought I'd mention that to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
In doing some of the readings on you, the term theater workshop facilitator came up. What is that?
I would actually create workshops and run them. And I use the term facilitator because and it's essentially the people participating that are, you know, actually doing it. So I'm just facilitating. I'm just there saying, okay, let's go from here and there. Let's try this. Let's do that. I'm not really kind of frontally lecturing. They're very active and they do. So yeah, I did a lot of workshops as well. And along with everything else, I facilitated and created and taught anything from, you know, theater basics and improv basics to, you know, more advanced stuff. And yeah, it's just it's part of everything. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff actually that I've done that sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I also did that, because it's so much. But yeah,
you don't realize that. I don't want to delve deeply into this, but you, when you were in Israel, you taught American accent, and I have to say that I watched a bunch of your trailers, and all those contact things are going to be at the bottom of the screen so people can see and they can click on it and blah blah. But you do one mean Southern accent.
Thank you.
I mean, really, really, it's like I'm in Birmingham, you know, listening to it. It's a great Southern accent. So you did a little of that teaching in Israel.
Yes, I worked mainly with professional working actors who kind of wanted to expand their repertoire and their toolkit. And so they would either want to improve their English, so they could do also roles of, you know, an American speaker and not just the foreigner. Yeah, I did that. And of course, I focused more on American accent. Yeah.
Okay, it's funny. I was watching last night something on I think it was Netflix, and one of the something about Anna. I don't even remember, but she was also in Ozark. Julia Garner. She's a young and up and coming actress, and she's half Israeli. She builds herself, but there's no. And she was doing Southern accents too, and I laughed. Because I thought of what I had seen with you.
Yeah, Southern accents are fun. They're fun to do.
No comment.
No, I mean, I'm talking about the work.
Okay,
in terms of the work.
Fine. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know much about the South because I live in North
Yeah.
Jersey.
Yeah.
So be it. Anyway, you've written, you've done some writing. Anything that we should know about writing wise? Some things you've written?
So mainly my main things that I've written were for the stage, the
Fine.
plays that I performed essentially. So a lot of children's plays. I've done a lot of comedic bits for other shows that I've done. Inconceivable, which is an entire show that I wrote. And I've also written, actually within Inconceivable, there's a bit in there. You haven't seen this because the clip is not up yet, but I've written a kind of a satirical children's book in a way. It's part of the show, and so that's kind of like a children's book that I've written. And yeah, so I've done my bits of writing. Nothing like, a novel or like, you're writing and have written, but yeah, it's
But it
different
comes
kind
to
of
you.
writing.
It comes to you. It's
Yeah.
there. It's there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a gift. It's there, and it's kind of I call it inexplicable. I do want to go off topic. I like to off topic right now. It's a cool question. I like to ask it. It's only a one-word answer, so don't worry. And you don't have to answer it either. But here's the scenario: living or dead, excluding family or friends, somebody you'd like to spend the day with. Yeah.
Only one.
No, you could say a few. It's your thing.
And excluding family or friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Living or dead.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Wayne Brady. Tina Fey. Those would probably be the top ones that I could think of. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love.
They're geniuses.
Geniuses.
And
geniuses.
So many ways. Yeah.
Yeah, just geniuses. And Robin Williams comes in my life every day because I've taken his voice from Mrs. Doubtfire and I've created characters and I use it on my granddaughter out there.
Oh, wow.
So and somebody was over the house last night and they said, "Calvin, you sound like Mrs. Doubtfire." I said, "Exactly." So I marvel at Robin Williams continuing, and Tina Fey. So good answers. You also you kind of touched on it already. I mean, you've written, produced, directed, and a lot of original material in Israel. If you wanted to say a couple of things about that, and you did that for a long time.
Yeah, I did it for over almost 20 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's everything from it's all original stuff, everything from children's plays to full-on musicals and shows, kind of like a music repertoire type of show, and this solo show that I've done. This Inconceivable is actually the first one that I wrote actually just for me, like just a solo. First of all, as a solo, and also me, and also about me. So that was kind of a whole different thing. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to Inconceivable. I just have to reiterate that it so touched me on a personal note because I've been there, and the humor, so much of what I've seen, I didn't see it all, but what I've extracted, it's like wow, and I keep saying to myself, if we only had some of that back then.
Yes. Same. I say that to myself. I say, wow, if I would have done the show, or if I would have seen a show like this back then, just to know that you're not the only one in the world, the freak of nature, just to know that it's okay. And just to know also that it's not dependent on anything. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's because I did this and this, or because I'm from this and this background. No, there's no discrimination here. It doesn't matter what background you have, what socioeconomic background you have, what race you are, what age you are, what you've done in your childhood. It doesn't discriminate. It can happen for many reasons. And like myself, it can happen also for no reason, because I have what's called unexplained infertility, which is the fun kind.
Wow.
The kind where you really don't know why everything is functioning, but there's, so that's crazy. Yeah. So I think that's also important for people to know that, it's something that it can be talked about, and it's strange that it isn't, and it should be talked about more, if at least for just people to be a bit more tolerant of what's going on and understanding of what's going on, particularly with everything related to women's health, but this in particular. I think a lot of it is just, put on the sidelines and not really given as much focus. And, so it's a shame. And I think that it needs to change, because there's so much, maybe that's also part of it. Everyone, people aren't talking about it because it's okay. Maybe so many people are going through it, but that's why it'll be fine, because so many people are going through it, so you'll be fine. And and you're not, and it's okay to not be. And it also, this whole infertility thing correlates directly with mental health, which has also been very much shushed, unfortunately, and unnecessarily so. And so I think that's also important to bring up, because it's, people need to talk about these things. I think if the pandemic did one thing, it's brought about that awareness of mental health, and that it's, okay to talk about stuff, and it's okay to actually take care of what's going on with your brain and emotions. Because up until then, nothing. Like, that was just crazy, people. You're crazy. So and now people know, wait a minute, it's not crazy, and we're all a little bit crazy, like the song, we're all a little bit crazy to some extent, and people now understand that that's, there's stuff going on that we should talk about. And I think that's also one of the main things for Inconceivable, even with when people watch it and they don't connect, they don't have, any experience with it, they can still connect to the point that, okay, it does show that everyone is going through something. It might not be infertility, but everyone is going through something. Everyone has their baggage. I talk about it right at the beginning of the show. Everyone's got different sets of baggage. They have the whole, matching set, or the heavier kind, or the kind with the broken wheels, or the weird contents inside that spill out. But everyone's got baggage, and it's okay. And people need to be understanding a bit more of one another.
I have a sales pitch for you. Listen to you.
Okay.
Here's the sales pitch. And I don't know if it has relevancy. I think it does. But the deal is, as I see it, we talked about this last week too. As I see it, talking about it, laughing about it, knowing about it, seeing it on stage, and Inconceivable, all of that in and of itself, if a doctor, if an IVF doctor says to the couple, hey, go watch Inconceivable because you'll laugh and I think it'll help you. I mean, that's, and I actually believe that.
Yes.
I actually believe that. Our problems weren't unknown, they were quite known. But I think if more, and I'm going to say this to my doctor friends, that this could be part of a treatment in and of itself for people to laugh.
Yes. I think it definitely, and I will say this, I'm not a medical professional or a scientist, but I do know people that have been in my audiences. I don't know all of them, but I do know some because they're either friends or friends of friends. But of those people that I know that 3 people were having issues and got pregnant after watching.
Wow. By the way, remarkable. And it's
remarkable. And that's 3 that I know. That's 3 that I know. I don't know of people that I don't know, but I just know because, somehow I was connected to them. And then, following a few months later, they had a child, or following a few months later, I found out they were pregnant when I knew that they had been, going through years of infertility and issues. And it just makes me so happy. I have no clue if it's connected to the show, but I just,
wow.
And it may not be, but I love to know that happens after. Like, I think that would be a great, it's a great icebreaker.
It is a great icebreaker. And it's almost like, it's almost like chicken soup. It can't hurt.
Exactly.
It can only help.
It can't hurt.
It can only help. Along those lines, when we were in the middle of all the stuff we were doing, and we heard a million stories of people who adopted, and then the pressure, this enormous pressure, that's expressed in Inconceivable, is taken off the table.
Yeah.
And then, 2 months later, they get pregnant.
Yes.
You hear that?
Many stories of that as well, but I would love to add a huge asterisk on that, but that is also not a cure, because a lot of people think that, okay, let's adopt so that we can get pregnant. Clearly that should not be the motive.
No.
But yes, I initially thought too, because we had initial issues at first when we wanted to first conceive, and then right before we were supposed to start fertility treatments, we found out we were pregnant naturally, and then we had our daughter. After that, when we tried to get our sibling, that's when we went through the craziness. And I want to come back and talk about that in a minute, but yeah, that I guess moment where I was like, oh, I'll be taken care of, and whatever. I guess maybe that's whatever. And then afterwards, when we tried again, I said, oh, it'll happen again. I'll be all stressed, and then I'll be about to shoot in my first round of hormones, and I'll find out I was pregnant just like the first time. No, that time I had to go through everything, and it wasn't successful and everything. And I just want to go back because it reminded me, secondary infertility is also an issue. Secondary infertility means that a couple already has a child, naturally usually, but they cannot conceive again. This happens a lot as well, very common. And it's kind of like this no man's land for people going through it, because they have this frustration of trying to conceive and they can't, but yet they also have this guilt, like, how dare I, because I already have a child and I can't talk about it, because that's like, what, am I not thankful? Am I being too I don't know, greedy? And that's a thing in itself, and it's also horrible. And it's just, there's so many layers and intricacies within this thing, that it's just mind-blowing just to, and I've, through Inconceivable, I've also, one of the biggest privileges has been to meet people going through other, and hearing all these stories. And it's just, wow, they're all so different and so the same. And it's been crazy just learning about all these, things that people are going through. You're just like, oh my God, people are going through all this craziness, and no one's talking, and no one's being a bit more, a bit nicer to you, and they're still honking at you down the street. It's like, just a little bit of empathy and tolerance. I think that's the main thing. Everyone's going through something.
Sure.
Yeah.
We talked about this before we went on air, and and again, having watched your trailers a bunch of different times, if somebody said my favorite, there's a few favorite things. This is not the question. The spritz thing I think is great. And I'll leave it at that. People, let them go watch it to find out what I'm
They'll have to
thinking
go
of.
find out.
Go find out about the spritz thing, because
You're
I've been
doing like a joke treasure hunt.
Yep. I've been there, and the spritz is real, and I'll
Yep.
leave it at that, albeit. But very seriously, and we talked about this before we went on air, and I wrote some notes down. Now, I call it a conspiratorial. Why Inconceivable is so relevant and important and futuristic, and that's a great term, futuristic, because our society and our world is conspiratorial on fertility.
Yes.
And we talked about it. There are more and more and more issues, environmental, sociological, the way we live our lives, women and well, couples are waiting, not even couples are waiting longer and longer, and it's getting harder and harder. So I think the world is heading towards almost an epidemic in infertility, and I think Inconceivable has even more of a place in the future. People got to look at it and laugh and understand.
Yes. Yeah, and I've had people in the audience, just because they came to see a show, or they came to see, someone told them to come see a comedic show, but people in the audience who are young, like way before marriage and children, but it gave them a lot of food for thought, because it's something like, oh, hold on, maybe we should think more forward. I think years ago, it wasn't a thing because people would get married and have children younger, usually. So they didn't really think about, planning in terms of fertility. But now there's a whole thing called fertility planning, because you kind of have to take that into consideration. Now, whole careers are kind of like changed or dependent on this nowadays. And it's just a shame, because, alongside your, corporate ladder climbing, you have to also figure out when in the world you're going to inject yourself with the next hormone to get, your eggs sucked out, so that in a few years, if you decide to, and your eggs survive, you'll be able to have children. Like, I think that is just mind blowing, but it's happening. And, not that, maybe we should pressure people to have kids younger. That's not the issue. It's just, there's an issue in that as well, just because what you said, we're living and children are growing through a whole different world environmentally, in terms of, all the toxins out there, lifestyles and everything. It's just all together. There's so much more stress, in general, because we're such a, global community. So everything is just, you're just connected to everyone all the time, and everything is all got to be done, and you got to do this and everything. Every job out there that you want to become successful has so much stress to it. It's really, there's a lot to take into consideration. It's, people kind of have to, I don't know, think about things differently. It's an issue.
It's a huge issue. I wrote about this in my novel not too long ago, and I discussed it with my son and daughter-in-law and my wife. We were all sitting and chatting. But you said something a couple of seconds ago. Environmentally, there's, I don't know how many, 40, 50, 60 million Americans' water is exposed to hormone disruptors.
Not just that, everything, metals,
all that stuff.
It's just, and then you can't opt for, plastic bottles, because you have the plastics issue, and the water there is not any better. And then you can't opt for, so basically, the things that are most basic to you, which is water and oxygen, those are just completely toxic right now. Correct. So what are you to do? And then people just like, oh, just give up because everything is toxic, everything. but it's just, it's awful. It needs to change. I think there is much more awareness now, and I think there is sort of, a movement of change. I think it obviously should move faster because it's going to affect this coming generation in terms of, at least fertility wise. But yeah, it's just crazy. It's sad and crazy.
Correct. And that's heavy. And we have to go back to.
And now some comedy. So I'll just say a little joke about a vagina, and then we're.
Go ahead. I mean, yeah. By the way,
it's part of
busy.
But it's part of Inconceivable also, because I said the topic is just, it's so heavy and so loaded, that if I didn't talk, I couldn't even talk about my own stuff without laughing. So definitely not talk about it in front of people that need to. There's no way I can't. I will always opt to watch a comedy over a drama or a tragedy. So definitely better to seep in the comedy. So yeah.
Good. And Inconceivable is just filled with it. Your segment on visiting the gyno, great stuff. It's great stuff. Your accents, truly. And again, I didn't see the whole thing. I did the.
Yeah, you have to see the show.
Yeah,
hopefully I'll get to your area soon, and you'll be able to. Yeah.
We have to talk about that when we go off air, which we're about ready to do. MEIRAV, this has been great, and I am a huge fan, even though I haven't seen it. Work, the mission, the identification I have. I said all that already. It's brave and amazing what you've done. It's so needed. We talked about that, and to laugh at that. So yes, I'm telling everybody to go check everything down there, and the links and everything will be for people to see. Just to kind of wrap it up, Inconceivable. By the way, I can foresee. I can foresee this as SOP, standard operating procedure. That you're in the middle of all this. Go watch Inconceivable. By the way, standard operating procedure. That's because having lived it, I know, and I can say it because I've lived it for enough years.
Yep.
I always like to ask this because I'm a movie buff, and watching movies have changed my life. Casablanca, we talked about that.
Yep.
Do you have favorite movies, favorite directors, favorite actors?
Yes, but so many to list.
Okay.
But I love movies too. I love theater, but I really love movies too. I look at different things, movies. Like I also look at, I really do. I love movies in all aspects. Like I look at, the angles and the acting and if there was continuity. I don't even know if the continuity, I'll call that out. I love the blooper reels. Love it. I'm like, that is my favorite thing sometimes in a movie. But yeah, I love the writing. I love to see the delivery. I love to kind of think of how that process was with the director and what was going on, off screen. And I just, I love movies too. Yeah.
I want to go back to what you said, continuity. And a lot of people don't realize what continuity is. And for me, it's a huge thing. I'll give you two examples. What the important continuity is, you got to make sure everything is flowing and done the right way. So I've watched Casablanca 150 times, literally, and it's changed my life. I'm not going into it, but there's a scene and the director, Michael Curtiz, great director, and just a great director, and uses shadows like nobody else I've ever seen. The way he uses shadows in a black and white movie is a work of art. truly, you know, where the shadows fall on Ingrid Bergman's face, and shadows. I mean, my goodness, it belongs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Yep.
And that's how much I love that movie. But then there's just one scene that rips my guts out because there's no continuity there, and it kills me, and it does ruin the movie for me. It's the scene in the train station when Bogart's waiting for Ilsa, and it's pouring rain, and she's not going to show up, and Sam has that letter, and he's reading the letter in the pouring rain. In pouring rain in the train station, and they got to get out of Paris before the Nazis get there, and it's raining so hard that the ink smears, and then Sam says, "Get on the train, we got to get out of here." So they're completely drenched, and 2 seconds later, he's standing on the steps leading up to the train, and he's completely dry. Humphrey Bogart. So that
they had those dryer vents on the entrance of the trains back then, right?
Yeah, right. So that, you know what, it killed it for me. And then one of my other movies that I love it's Hitchcock's North by Northwest. I love it. It's just a great movie. I mean, it's an old movie, and Cary Grant, love him. And yet there's a scene near the end, and I'm not giving anything away. And again, this is continuity, powerful. There's a scene near the end. They're in this big cafeteria, and there's going to be a shooting scene, and Eva Marie Saint shoots, and I've seen the movie, 50 times, not 150, and she's ready to shoot, and right in the background behind her shoulder there's a little kid who puts his hands to his ears before she even shoots. Are you kidding me? So that's the power of continuity. It ruined the movie for me.
Although I'm sure that even though it did somehow slide past by editing, I'm sure the filmmakers also they also saw what you saw, and it also kills them too. But yeah, it's but it's part of it. It's part of that, and it also kind of, as a viewer, you're like, okay, yeah, it's part of the deal. So but it's all good.
It's not a perfect world.
Right.
It's not. So I can't thank you enough. First of all, for conceiving Inconceivable. How's that? For conceiving it, a little bit too late for me, but never too late. And it's brilliant, and it's wonderful, and it's needed. And thank you so much for your passion and your time, and for being here. And by the way, I'll say it now, I'll say it off air. Come back. I'm here.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Come back in any shape, way, or form, whenever, because I'm always here.
Thank you.
Wearing out chairs. So thank you so much, and to be continued.